That was actually a question we wanted to ask you based on what you're saying is like, does it create a whole level of complexity in just how people think? Does it create fear in execution on maybe some of these opportunities? Like, do they get factored in decision making in a real way?
Absolutely, right? You always have to think about how regulators and customers will perceive something. And
Mm-hmm.
increasingly, even if things are extremely positive, the reaction could be very negative. And so you really have to think through all of the possible reactions that might come up, how you'll respond to them. And then even that process can sometimes be used against you. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal recently about how Amazon had some secret operation to sort of benchmark, what other folks were doing in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And
By the
I
way,
guess,
which it's done for since it was founded.
pardon me?
I mean, which it's done since it's
Yeah,
founded. I mean, it's
but
like,
they created like another company called Big River, and this was all in the Wall Street
Yeah.
Journal, which is funny because it's like Amazon. So they
Right.
created Big River, and they signed up. They signed up to be a seller on Walmart. They
Right.
actually ship
Yes.
product,
Yeah.
and they, it's very common at companies to create like hey, what will happen if somebody finds out? What are our press responses?
Right.
And even that was held up as like, can you believe how evil these guys are? They did this thing to check out their competitors, and they even had this PR document on how to respond to questions. Like, this is totally basic stuff.
It's actually good business. I mean, when we were at Channel Advisor, we would go and act like a seller so that we could hear the sales pitch of our competitor. I mean, isn't this just typical espionage that you should do?
Well, actually, the most interesting thing is I think a lot of Amazonians were probably surprised to hear it exists, because Rick alluded to it earlier. Sort of, it's very deep in the DNA of Amazon that we start with the customer and we don't look at competitors. And so, I suspect 95% of Amazonians never saw any data on competitors.
Yeah.
And generally, as the DNA of the company is not even to talk about competitors. It is really just to talk about what helps the customer and what makes the experience better. So, it's a very interesting project. But yes, you're right, Jess. It does slow things down. It does hurt innovation. It's good that we have competition regulators, but I personally think the pendulum has swung a little bit far to one side.
I mean, it's like shots fired on this program with Lina Khan. I mean, Ali, you're coming out swinging for the FTC. It's interesting.
I tried to tag her in my posts, and
how did that work out for you?
Tag Lina Khan on LinkedIn. It's a blocked account, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, luckily she can't revoke your law license, so you're good.
No, I don't think so.
I think the other side of this is you're right about the innovation angle, and I think where we're talking about Amazon and focused on the competition versus the customer, I think Amazon's focus on the competition actually comes from the customer. Obviously, in a retail, consumer is very price conscious, and they have a lot of options, and so they're pricing. So if you're on the pricing team at Amazon, absolutely, you have to be thinking about the competition 24/7 because the consumer has options. And Jeff Bezos is famous for saying the consumer is divinely discontent. Like, what you have today could change tomorrow. And if another one comes down, to use a statement from Daniel Day-Lewis, and there will be blood, they could drink your milkshake. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is if I'm getting too legalistic here, tell me, but that is actually one of the most interesting things about the FTC case against Amazon, which is that the paper that Lina Khan famously wrote in law school about Amazon claimed that they were using lower prices in their scale to keep competitors out of the market. But if you read the FTC case, it's the exact opposite argument, that they use restrictive contracts to keep prices high, and keep sellers off of other platforms. And so, is it that they keep prices high? Is it they keep prices low? And as a former Amazonian, I'll tell you something. There is nothing more important to that company than sharp pricing. It is it was
on the flywheel. It was on the flywheel.
So I find the whole case very fascinating. I can't wait to see where it goes. But I'll tell you, knowing the Amazon legal team, they are not going to stop trying to invent on behalf of the customer, because they saw what happened to Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
They saw that Microsoft basically took 10 years off, and it took them 20 years to sort of get back to where they were, and nobody wants that to happen. And so, whether it's Amazon or our great startup ecosystem in the United States, it's all about taking risk. right?
Mhm.
There's so many laws in the books. There's nobody who can comply with all of them. And I think the successful, one of the things that makes America a great place is that people do take that risk. And they succeed sometimes, right? You look at the
Right.
great things like Uber, Airbnb, those folks took risk, they broke some laws, and we have new industries. And I
Yeah.
think we're all better off for it.
Yeah, it's a great point.